Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful and bright day. God, we just ask you to be with us in this little time we have together. Lord, just bring us some little bit of insight and a little bit of wisdom. And God, we thank you for these men and women who continue to serve you in their churches. And God, we just ask that you would bless each and every one of them. We ask all these things in your name. I pray. Amen.
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 Well, first things first, Mr. Rob Gowdy, welcome. Rob is a new member from Niceville, Florida, and so we want to say welcome, Rob.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm going to jump into some basic questions here. We'll try to waste a little time, and hopefully Jeff will join us here soon. But we had a couple of questions that were asked outside of elevator questions, and we want to see um, if we can answer those. I'm going to start. Sorry, I'm looking at my list. Okay, I'm going to start with Austin out of Statesboro. Austin's not with us, it looks like. But Austin asked, what other PM tasks can you do besides checking belts and phase testing? Anybody want to throw a couple other answers at that? I'm assuming that he's speaking about stuff he can do before he has to call his contractor, his HVAC guy.
I'm sure Chris has a manual, but probably it's in its third edition.
I'm on Rev 4.
I was not going to throw Chris under the bus yet.
But you restate the question because
Yeah.
I didn't understand if he's just talking about more of a weekly, monthly, quarterly, or is he talking about annual or initial startup?
Yeah, and because he's not here, I'm not 100% sure, but it says specifically, what are the other PM tasks can you do besides checking belts and phase testing? Now, granted, he's at First Baptist Statesboro, so let's just understand who was there before him. So that's why he might be struggling. And he's a good friend, so that's the only reason I can say that to Mr. Johnny O.
Well, many units have a lubrication point, and I'm sure he needs to check to see if it has lubrication of some sort, Zerk fittings or that kind of thing. And when he's saying testing, he's not talking about doing the actual maintenance, not cleaning the coils, changing the filters, that kind of thing.
Yeah, he just said checking belts and phase testing.
So we heard that in CP last week.
You can always check your filters while you're in there, right?
Yeah. I mean, we do all of our own filters. We do all of our own belt. We change all of our own belts. We do all of our own greasing.
I mean, a visual look over too is always good to just make sure nothing's loose or, give it a good once over, make sure there's nothing obvious. It's always good to do.
Yeah, if he wants to take it to the next level, he needs to inspect the condensate pan and make sure the condensate drain is very clear and running. He needs to do vibration testing if he wants to really go to the nth degree. So what's this, how are the bearings wearing, and is there a vibration issue based on the size of the unit? If when he says phase testing, we don't check the phase unless we've messed with the electrical wiring. If the initial phasing is correct and it was tested upon original commissioning, we don't go back and recheck phasing unless the power company sending us power has done something, and that's our only three-phase piece of equipment. But all two-phase and single-phase won't matter anyway.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Any other comments on how anybody else handles it?
The outdoor heat pumps use their own cleaners, so you want to make sure you can clean those also in the process with the proper cleaning agent.
Yeah, that's a good point, Monty. We don't have those here, so
what you could do if he is one of those kind of commissioning guys is do static pressure test and airflow test and see that in the Navy we have differential pressures or magnehelix that tell you when your filters are due based on differential pressure. You don't go by that, but in his case, his ductwork could be collapsed, or there could be pressure change differences if people are shutting all the dampers, if they have control over dampers and the manual dampers. So he may do airflow testing. So here we'll even do airflow testing when there's a lot of complaints to see if maybe something has changed to make sure we have our air balance. So we'll do our own air balance in-house with just simple tools to ensure we have good airflow on that zone or that ductwork.
Awesome. Thank you all. Let's see, I got another one here. Patrick, you want to comment on yours?
Sure. So lately it's come to pass that we have a problem with our sprinkler system. We have had hard water for a long time. And I didn't realize that it was as inundated as it was. I sent over some pictures to Erin. I don't know who's got those. If
Yep,
they
I
want to do a
have
screen
them.
share.
I'll pull.
It's just so I didn't know when they do the inspections, the fire inspections, the sprinkler system, at least where I'm at anyway, they only so that particular one is way up 35 feet up, and you can see the white things hanging down. That's I forget if it's a stalactite or a stalagmite, but that's
Right
the
as top.
calcium buildup. That's the calcium buildup that's coming off of a junction where the two pipes meet. In that particular case, I think it's right where one of the sprinkler heads is, but that's about 35 feet up, and it's in a the ceiling's painted black, so like a warehouse type design. So I couldn't get a nice clear picture of that. The camera just wouldn't focus on it. But that's one example. If you move through the other pictures, there'll be a clearer examples of it. But I'm pretty much inundated with. That's the beginning, so you can see the rust down near the bottom where the ceiling tile is. So that's what's happening is the calcium buildup in the areas that doesn't get a lot of flow. Yep, is starting to rust. There you go. There's a good example of it, almost like an icicle kind of thing.
Mm.
And that's the calcium sitting in the pipe from what they tell me. So, for you guys that have sprinkler systems, that's again just before the crystallization starts. And that one, don't know if we can zoom on that picture, but you can see up above. There you go. You got more calcium buildup right there where it's starting to drip. So I'm not sure how to handle it. I've got a few fire companies coming out and giving me estimates, but talked to a little bit with Hal and whatnot. But this information I'm trying to throw back at y'all so that if you do have sprinklers and you get up into your system, you get up into your ceilings and look for yourselves if you have hard water. If we don't have hard water, it probably isn't even going to be a thing. But it seems to be a big job coming up, and I'm not sure if we're going to have to go from a wet system to a dry system and on and on and on. I don't know if any of you guys have ever experienced any of this in any of your systems, prior, present. But yeah, I'd be interested to see if you've had any experience with that stuff.
Well, Monty, here in Lubbock, we do have hard water, and that's matter of fact, I called my fire guy this morning when I saw your question, just to ask him specifically what he would recommend in general. And the reality of it is because of fire code, you can't put anything inside those pipes to prevent hard water. You're not allowed to put, my cold water and hot water loops for my HVAC system have chemical in them to protect from hard water, but you can't do that in a fire system. You can't put a softener on a fire system because it can't keep up with the pressure. And so what we do here is he regularly goes through all my pipes, and when we start to see any type of that, whether typically because we do it annually, we don't get to to the buildup, the white buildup like that, we get to the rust issues. We have to shut it down and we have to replace those parts.
Okay. Well, I mean, and I've only peeked my head in a few of the spaces, but sadly, as you can see from evidence of the pictures, almost every space I've poked my head in, I have the buildup, which from what I'm told, yeah, from what I'm told, that
Oh,
that
wow.
could go at any moment in time. And of course, my biggest fear is, like with anything with water, as we all should know, that it's sprinkler. I mean, my fire alarm will tell me when it happens because they'll be alerted.
Right.
But water, and then the cleanup from that, and then everything that goes with water, because mold and mildew and just all of the above. So
Well, and the fun thing with that too is I don't have hard water here. I have city water, and so I don't have that issue. But I've come up across some problems with inconsistencies in the quality of the pipe.
yeah,
So every time there's an inspection and they drain a system down and then they repressurize it, that pressure differential on the all those pipe joints and everywhere that there's an inconsistency in the pipe quality weakens. And so I've had pinholes um, develop because of those sudden pressure changes. Some of them have kind of self-sealed long enough for me to get them replaced without any serious issues. But just like with this, that pipe is deteriorating, and every time they do an inspection and they drop that pressure and repressurize, you're getting closer and closer to one of those catastrophically failing.
absolutely. And the other, just so you all know, and a little bit of other information is a lot of so far all the pictures except for that one that looks a little fuzzy because it was way up in the ceiling, but all of these are in a drop down ceiling, and it's leaking slow enough that when the leak hits the top of the ceiling tile, it evaporates before I ever see any evidence on the side of the ceiling tile that you can see when you're walking down the hallway, as an example. So
No
there was no
staining.
evidence whatsoever that I had an existing problem. But as soon as I moved the ceiling tile and stuck my head up there, it's like, whoa, what's happening? And I could see on the back side of the tile the evidence of the water, like a little drip at a time. But
Right.
again, it would never penetrate the whole tile for me to see it evidence to be like, hey, there's a problem in this general area.
Well, the last one that I had an issue with was right here in one of our counseling offices. I discovered it by smell. There was no staining in the ceiling tile yet, but if you've smelled sprinkler discharge when they drain those lines, how bad that smells, that was inside one of our counseling offices, and it was just because of a little pinhole leak.
Uh, that's good. The only bad thing with that is I can't smell. I can't smell anything unless it has to be super strong, which is
Right.
a blessing and a curse at the same time. But I
Well,
appreciate the feedback. I really do.
those, I mean, that's just unfortunately, Patrick, that buildup isn't just where you're seeing that. Unfortunately, that buildup builds up inside those pipes as well. And so a 1 inch pipe could technically be a half-inch pipe after
Right.
after a lot of years of that hard water buildup.
Yeah, I mean, moving forward, if I had to stay with a wet system, some of the solution could potentially be is to drain it once a week to get all that stuff out of there and to put the flow through, because the biggest problem, the water's stagnant because it doesn't go anywhere. It just kind of sits there so the minerals get a chance to re-solidify. But I'm not sure what to do. I just didn't know if anybody had experience with it. I'm just working with it because I'm a Catholic. Well, I'm not sure how all the different denominations go, but here I have to get 3 quotes, go through the archdiocese, the whole kit and caboodle. It just, every time I'm looking at it, it's like a 6-figure job. So I was just, you
Yeah.
guys are always great, and if you don't know, you're gonna know somebody that knows. So
Joe's got his hand up there.
Yeah, but Chris was first.
Well, the it, Patrick, this is everywhere you have a drip, any drip, you have to fix it immediately. You should not. I wouldn't be as worried about calcium buildup in the pipe if there's no flow. If you're not flowing water through there except for during your annual testing, then the amount of calcium buildup is going to be less than your 5-year inspection. And then during your 5-year inspection, they might notice buildup, and then you go and do a full flush to clean that out at 5 years. But as soon as you see this, that means that joint is leaking. If that joint's leaking, you've already found 5 or 6 joints leaking. Yeah, that's $100,000 job to tell somebody to come out and fix every one of these bad joints.
Yep.
But to flush it weekly is to add more calcium. So I don't know that I would do that.
No, meaning, sorry, I need to, once I have it repaired, part of the solution, if we stay with a wet system, from what they tell me, would be to move the water more frequently. Would that make sense?
It's just there's new water has new calcium. So I think it's counterintuitive.
But if it's moving more frequently, the deposits are building up less often, maybe. Yeah. I don't.
Well, our
Probably gonna have to go to a dry system or something of that nature and change the whole thing. Luckily, it's in the newer part of the building, not the older part of the building. But again, I'm just throwing it out there because if you guys don't know, then we got a problem, right?
Hey, Patrick, how often are those pipes getting flushed out for the fire test?
The once a year or the 5 year. That's the only time, unless I have a repair job, because I have had a few elbows that, as you see, these are just the ones I know about currently. I've had a few replaced over the last couple of years, but the five, no, this is the first time and this, believe it or not, only came about by happenstance because I had a duct detector. If you guys have all that information, you have all that equipment. I had a duct detector that was going crazy, just shooting me a trouble code consistently. Well, consistently, but not the same time all the time, but frequently within, it could happen 5 times a day or 10 times a day or once a day. So anyway, when they were tracking, that turned out to be a loose wire in one of the housings. That's how this was found, though. And then once this was found, I was looking around and found a bunch more. So this all started. This is a disaster waiting to happen.
Yep.
And I'm just throwing it back at you guys as, hey, this happened to me. Don't let this happen to you. On top of, have you dealt with this? And can you, any information is great. So
it might be 6 figures to fix right now, but if they wait until it all catastrophically fails, it's going to be a lot more expensive.
Amen. Amen.
Monty's question about flushing, this is a dead leg. This goes to a sprinkler head in the ceiling. So this little elbow here doesn't ever get flushed legitimately unless you take sprinkler heads off and do a full flush.
Yep. Hey, Joe, did you have a comment? Joe, your mic is
muted.
There.
Hold down your space bar, Joe, while you're talking.
You hear me now?
There you go.
Now we do.
Okay, so yeah, I would just reiterate. We had a sprinkler head froze, so we have a tank system. We don't have public water, so we had a sprinkler head rupture in a freezing temperature, and I can attest to what Jeff said. Man, it stinks. So if you get a leak, you find it real quick because you can smell it. But if you're getting and like you said, a 5-year test, that's a check because this kind of problem, those pipes can close down and actually go to nothing. And but I mean, I see this condition in certain areas, and it takes a long time for it to get. You got to keep an eye on it, but it takes a long time for it to get to the point of failure. This is heavy black pipe. I mean, you might get a leak, but I mean, you could, just a suggestion is the possibility of just going around and repairing the ones that are bad and get an evaluation of what condition is the entire system in. And maybe you could even do it a step at a time, budget it at 3 months, 6 months, a year, and do a portion of it and then do another portion of it. So you're not spending $100,000 to, do all these repairs at once, evaluate the worst joints and repair those joints. Because the ones above it, there's some of them that look okay. This almost indicates to me that it could be the rusting through that fitting. That fitting could be rusting through from the inside out, and it could be ready for failure that way. But it also might just not be tight enough that it's leaking a little bit. And hardwood. We have hardwood, or our tank is filled with well water, and I have hardwooder, and it wreaks havoc on your domestic plumbing as well as your sprinkler system. So anyway, I think everything that's been mentioned is pretty spot on. I just wanted to make those comments.
Sure. I appreciate you guys, and Lisa, I appreciate all the assistance.
All right. Thank you, guys. I believe Mr. Hanson is available. There he is.
Yes.
How are you, Jeff?
Oh, I apologize. I thought this was at 3 Eastern time, so I just got off a plane and then I hopped in the highway, and then Aaron was nice enough to reach out to me, so I pulled over. I'm in a Waffle House parking lot. So,
Thanks for joining.
The good part is when you're done, you can go get lunch.
Yes, I can, and I guess I will.
Well,
But good. Are you ready for me to talk a little bit
Yes,
about
yes, sir.
elevators?
Please.
Okay, so when I was asked to present today, I wanted to do, because in all my years, especially since I've been a member of the organization here, people have asked about modernization and, are they being taken? The price seems high. Is this necessary? Is it not necessary? So I wanted to fill some information. So one is you can start budgeting for modernization, because everything wears out. It just is what it is. So I wanted to tell you some ideas or some time frames, and then some things to look out for when elevator companies give you proposals to modernize. Sometimes they want to replace the entire system all the way down to the rails and the cab shell. It's not necessary unless you have a serious problem going on, but that's what I'm gonna address. So if there's ever any questions, let me know. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is the age of equipment. So in elevators, there's various types of equipments. There's what we call MRLs, which is machine room-less elevators. This came about in the late 90s. And it's a lot of people have these MRLs where the machine's in the hoistway. It's because it gives them more space outside. You don't need a machine room anymore, whether it be above the elevator or for hydraulic off to the side. So MRLs came around. Not a big fan of them, but they're out there, so I have to pretend I like them at times. So, but that's one of them. MRLs last about 20 years. The problem with MRLs is that the machine that's installed in the hoistway, typically it's attached to the rails, the guide rail system. They are not repairable machines. So when the technician comes out to do maintenance for you, they're actually standing on top of the car, because this is up in the overhead section. So they're standing on the car, they're greasing Zerk fittings and so on. They're doing what they can, but if the bearings go bad on the inside, if the coils go bad on the inside, it's done. You cannot take it out and repair it. You have to replace it. And it's very, very expensive. And that's why I'm not a big fan of MRLs. But that's the first one. Traction elevators. These are the elevators you see in with the cables that are pulling them up and down. You see in the Die Hard movies and stuff. Those typically last around 25 years. And when I say they last, there's some that are out there that have been running since the 1950s. When I say this is the time, it's because you're not going to get the equipment anymore. Items are obsolete. You can't find people that have enough history on how to repair these older types of equipment. And so the elevator stays down for a longer period of time. So these are just time frames to think about when you should start budgeting, because at some point the knowledge is going to pass on because people are going to retire or, things happen. but 25 years is the average for traction or what we call electric elevators. Hydraulic elevators, you can probably get 25 to 30 years out of them if they are the older ones, meaning the ones that were installed in the prior to, I'd say, 2010. Hydraulics that were installed after 2010, you're probably lucky to get 25 years out of it. So in 2035, you'd be looking at doing something. Dumbwaiters last about 25 years. Escalators last about 30 years. So a lot of people, when I share this with them and I do seminars on modernization, they wonder, why does an escalator last so much longer than a traction or a hydraulic or an elevator? Because escalators are typically running nonstop, 7 days a week, especially at airports, at places like that where they have the escalators. And the reason being is how they're designed. They have a bull gear, they have a motor, that's it. And then there's belts or handrails that are pulling around. So I'm not saying you don't need to repair an escalator, but actually replacing an escalator is very seldom because you can replace all of those components. So that's why when I tell people, they question, well, how can escalators last so long? It's because you can maintain every single piece of equipment on an escalator, which you can't on some elevators. Some other reasons to modernize besides age is, again, I've touched on it, is obsolescence. If you can't find the parts anymore, if nobody is willing to rebuild the parts, it's done. If you lose software on elevators that were installed from the 80s on up, we start playing with computers and we start dealing with software and chips that we have. If you ever lose the software, the elevator's done. You will not find anybody anymore that can repair or that can reprogram those really old elevators. So that's where it becomes obsolete. Some people modernize for energy savings. Don't get too concerned about the energy savings because I've done studies on LEED for buildings and so on. The amount of energy that the elevator uses is considerably less than everything else going on in the building, the AC, the heat, the lights. So it's really not that big of a deal, even though in the industry we tried to push energy savings, convert everybody from DC to AC because of the startup and so on. I do agree with going to AC, but it's not as big of an energy savings as you may all think. There's worn out equipment, could happen because of rust, could happen because of bad maintenance over the year. It could happen because of bad power or what I call dirty power. So the power comes in and you get these glitches every once in a while. And there's certain places in the US that have dirty power. It's just not super clean. It's frustrating because that causes intermittent issues. And then you as the users or the person taking care of it, you get frustrated because the elevator comes out and says, the elevator's running fine. Well, they're running fine because of whatever that window is where the power is what I call clean. It's not having spikes in the energy coming through. If it's 208, it's not spiking at 240, 250, or lowering down to 150, 160. That's bad power and it happens. People are upgrading their grids, but it's slow. Texas, I find bad power a big issue all over the place. And that's just because the electrical grids in the state of Texas. The last reason to modernize is probably to me, and it probably is the main one, is for reliability and performance. You want to make sure your equipment's going to work when you need it to work. If you don't feel comfortable with the reliability, it's time to start thinking about it. Modernizing elevators is not cheap. You're talking for hydros close to $100,000, depending on what you're doing. For traction or electric elevators, you're talking about $150,000 to $175,000, depending on what you do. If you do an MRL, you're into the 200,000 range. So it's very, very expensive. When you modernize hydraulic elevators, I like hydraulic elevators a lot. I for sure call them hydros. Hydros, what to modernize is your controller. That's where your brains are. That's your computer. The problem when you modernize, or use the term modernize as opposed to repairing, if you replace a controller, you need to bring everything up to the latest code, which includes your electrical going into the elevator machine room, which is your disconnects. You may have to add additional disconnects. It's also, you have to upgrade your fire panel, and that can get very expensive. In 2001, the elevator code was rewritten for the fire, so now you have to have 3 signals. Most fire panels only allow 2 signals or 2 sets of twisted pair wires. Now you need 3. And the third one is for that fire hat indicator. If you all have a newer elevator, you see a little light in your elevator that lights up that says fire, or you're on fire service. That's what that extra signal's for. That signal is tied to your smokes in your machine rooms, but it has to drop all the way down to wherever your fire panel is, and there's usually not enough spare relays and contacts to make that happen. But when we say modernize, we're talking about swapping out your controller. Otherwise, we're talking about pairs. When you modernize in a hydraulic elevator, you're looking at the controller, the door operator, your fixtures, because you have to upgrade them so that they will work and talk with the new controller. Traveling cable is a must every time you modernize. The optional item is your power unit, which is your pump, it's your valve, it's your tank, it's the motor. Now, if you have an old valve, you have to modernize your entire power unit because new valves do not fit into the older style power unit tanks. It's just, nobody ever thought of it, and I understand. But a lot of people will try to make you, when you do a modernization on hydro, do the controller, the door operator, the fixtures, the power unit, and the traveling cable. Be cautious about the power unit. That alone is about $25,000 to $30,000 of your modernization price. So if you really don't need it, don't do it. Traction elevators. You're dealing with some of the same components. You're dealing with the controller, you're dealing with the door operator, dealing with fixtures, you're dealing with the traveling cable. But I always recommend, if the electric elevator is old enough and it has a DC system or a motor generator that's creating the AC for the elevator to work, you want to get rid of that motor generator set. When you get rid of that, you have to upgrade your DC motor to an AC motor. There's no two ways around it. Some electric companies will still work on motor generator sets. Most of them will just say, no, it's an obsolete piece of equipment. We don't want you to mess with it. So if any of you have motor generator sets, you really have to start thinking about getting rid of it. And when you modernize, replacing it, the DC motor with an AC motor. And that's also where you'll get some energy savings. Things to avoid when you modernize. This is one of the big ones. Proprietary equipment. The big boys, so that's the Otises out there, the Schindlers, the Kones, the TKEs, at least for the States. Those 4 companies make their own elevator controllers. So when we talk about proprietary equipment, we're talking mainly about their controllers. They want you to buy their proprietary controllers, which has specialty software. Their factory, they have to fund their factory. So that's why they're doing it, besides selling everything else that they make. Proprietary equipment, as a consultant, we changed the rules on what that meant back in probably 1997, 1998. Proprietary equipment used to mean that you only could buy it from the OEM, which is true. I can't buy an Otis controller unless I work for Otis. I can't buy a TKE controller unless I work for TKE. But we changed what proprietary meant, and we changed it to proprietary means, will you get technical support, whether you work for the manufacturer of that controller or not. So if you have Otis and you get fed up with the Otis and you want to try Schindler out, Schindler can't call Otis's engineers for technical support if it's Otis proprietary equipment. They just can't. An independent elevator can't call any of the big four for technical support on a piece of proprietary equipment. So that's how we changed it, because the big boys got smart and started saying, well, we do have a non-proprietary controller, which means that you can buy components for it, but you cannot get technical support. So whenever you modernize, you want to make sure anybody can get technical support to take care of your equipment. Otherwise, you get locked into long-term maintenance contracts, which escalate every year between 3.5% to 8%. And after a few years, it doesn't make sense to be running the elevator because you're paying way over what the market is. But you can't hire someone else because no one else can get the technical support for that proprietary equipment. It's a big issue with MRLs, machine roomless elevators. Um, the other thing is, if you have multiple elevators and they work in a group or a duplex, don't think that you can just modernize one of the two elevators. The only way you're going to do that is if you buy a cross cancellation panel, which means you're buying more electrical items that can go bad. What you may want to do is run your two elevators that are side by side as individuals. So they're going to chase each other on calls, but it's not a duplex anymore. So if the elevator on your right is answering a call on the second floor, the one on the right or in the left stays where it is. That's a duplex. When they run as two simplexes, they're both going to be going to that second floor call. They're both going to be trying to answer it. However, it saves you the money. Instead of doubling your cost by modernizing two elevators, you're only modernizing one. You're just changing the operation. One of the other things that's been popular for the last 4 or 5 years is hydraulic oil changes. Hydraulic oil changes are necessary when the viscosity is low and it's causing problems with your seal, or you can't get the temperature right for the oil, and it's all because of viscosity. If the oil gets too thin, yes, you need to do a hydraulic oil change. If the oil is dirty or cloudy, meaning water got into the oil, yes, you need to do an oil change, because otherwise you're going to ruin your entire system and then you have no choice but to modernize. However, the big boys all say that you need to change the oil every 10 years. It's a false statement. It was a statement to try to drive repair work, but it is not necessary unless the oil lost its viscosity or is cloudy or real dark. It's not a golden yellow like a nice beverage. Then you have to change the hydraulic oil. Try not to ever reuse fixtures. You're going to run into more problems and more costs because labor dollars, or the cost for labor in the elevator industry, is extremely expensive. Do not try to have your elevator person that's doing your mod reuse the fixtures. We've talked a little bit about valves already. Hoist and governor cables, typically those are covered under a maintenance agreement for electric elevators. However, if they're worn, replace them at the time of the mod, because then you're going to get another 5-10 years of coverage out of it under the warranty from the mod, which you're not going to get when they replace them under maintenance. So I would suggest just be cautious about hoist and governor cables. And the last one is, you really never want to replace an in-ground hydraulic jack unless it's leaking. If it's leaking, you have no choice but to replace it. But don't believe when you do a modernization that you have to replace the jacks. You don't have to replace the twin post telescoping above ground jacks. You don't have to replace the in-ground jack unless there's problems with them. If there's no problems, let it go. A jack replacement on top of the price of a mod can run you anywhere from $45,000 to $70,000. And if the hole caves in after you pull the existing cylinder out of the ground, now you could pay another $100,000 to $150,000 trying to re-drill that hole and get rid of any boulders or rocks that are down there. So replacing jacks is a very last situation. Last thing I got is some concerns about modernizing. We talked about you have to meet the latest code when you modernize. You have to do the fire panel tie-in. You have to upgrade certain electrical items such as your disconnects. You have to add a 110 disconnect in addition to your high voltage 2.8 460 disconnect. You may have to add a sump pump in your pit. You do probably have to change your shutoff valves if they are the old style where you have to put a wrench on there because it's just got a square top on it. You have to change that to a ball shutoff valve where it's got a lever that you turn to open and close. Be careful if you have sprinklers. If you have sprinklers in the machine room and you have to install a shunt trip, that's another disconnect. It's more money, it's more cost. What else do I have? Oh, and then you're going to have people traffic because people are going to be concerned. There's going to be noise. There's going to be smells that are coming through, especially when they're doing some cutting and so on. But just be aware of this so you can inform the users that this is what to expect. And that's one of the reasons why I always recommend changing out the fixtures, because when the people finally get their elevator back after a few months of downtime, they may see a new beautiful cab interior, they may see new push buttons, and everybody, oohs and ahs and said, oh, this is fantastic. And then you get some praise after all the negative attitude for the first couple of months. So, that's all I got. That's what I wanted to share with you. Are there any questions that I can answer?
Anybody got anything?
I have one question.
Yeah, go for it.
So I have electric on one side of the building and a hydro on the other side of the building. And back in June, almost a year ago, they replaced the packing for the hydro.
Yes.
And it's leaking within a year. Is that normal?
No, a packing should last 3 to 4 years. If the packing's leaking, it could be because the cylinder or the piston inside the cylinder is scored. So the best thing to do is see if you can have your maintenance person or maintenance company run that jack and see if it's scored. If it's scored, well, that's why it's leaking, because the oil's coming up the trough or the scoring that it was made in the piston. But if it's leaking that quickly, my belief is they installed the wrong packing or they didn't put it in properly. Because all it is a fancy O-ring. And if they have a bubble on one side, well, sure, oil's going to leak through that side. So to me, it just tells me they didn't install it right, or there's a piston problem.
And then when the oil is low from the leaking, when the elevator gets to the top, it's going to sound like a carnival ride, right? All kinds of
Correct.
noise and shaking, but it's not going to fall. I try to tell them that all the time. I even tried to sell tickets to the carnival ride during Halloween, but
Correct. It is not going to fall. It's a big fallacy. If you have somebody that wants to listen when you explain that it's not going to fall, you can just explain. You can take a Dixie cup and poke a pinhole in it. The oil's only going to come out as fast as it can. So if you have a small hole in your cylinder, the oil can only come out that fast. Now, if you have a big hole in the cylinder, it's going to come out, but it doesn't just automatically start big. It starts small and then it gets larger because of electrolysis in the soil. So elevators don't just fall like that. It doesn't happen. But if the elevator is cavitating, one of the things you may want to look into is called an oil pit reclaimer. What it does is when oil is leaking out of the cylinder head, which is where the packing goes between the piston and the cylinder, that's where the packing is. It's called an oil reclaimer. There's a tube that comes out of it, goes into this oil reclaimer, and then there's a tube that goes back to your power unit tank. So when the oil gets into this bucket that's in the pit floor, it actually pumps it back into the power unit tank. So you're never really losing the oil in the pit or in the ground. It's always sucking it back in. But it is called an oil reclaimer. It probably costs around $8,000 with labor and material to do that.
Cool. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
Joe, you had a question?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
I got actually a couple of them. So we have two hydraulic units. One's 15 years old. I had problems with it banging at the top, and I eventually had the first recommendation from the company that I was using at that time was that I needed a tank heater to heat the hydraulic oil, to warm the hydraulic oil. But anyway, ultimately, I found out that the valve body inside the hydraulic unit was going bad. I mean, it would bang, people would freak out. It sounded like it was going to explode. Once I rebuilt the valve body, um, it's been working fine ever since. So that unit's 15 years old. I never replaced the hydraulic oil, so I'm due to replace this hydraulic oil, correct?
If it's not a golden color, like a nice Coors beer, if it's
Yeah.
not that color,
Okay.
it's time to change it.
Okay.
If it's a beautiful golden color, you're fine.
Okay.
The other issue with the knocking, besides the valve, because the valve will do that, especially if something got into it or the O-rings in the valve started decaying or getting lost, is what's called the stop ring. So I'm assuming this is an in-ground jack.
Yeah, and it wasn't hitting the stop ring.
Okay.
Because yes, it wasn't hitting the stop ring, so that's why we determined it was the valve body eventually. But I mean, people were horrified. They thought they were going to die.
Yeah, it's when that happens, depending on if the person's litigious or not, all of a sudden legal starts coming into play because people say, well, it buckled my knees, it made me fall when it hit so hard, these kind of things. So it's something, I'm glad you took care of it as quickly as you did, because um people get scared, and that's
Yeah.
okay, but making up a story to justify that you got scared isn't the right thing to do. And I deal with that way too often as it is now with personal injury attorneys.
Okay,
So
can I do you so that this is in a pit, the jack's in the pit, and it's below grade. It was in the center of the building, so it was in the winter. It did get cold down there. Do I really need this hydraulic heater now? Can I turn that off?
yeah, you can turn it off.
Okay.
The nice thing about a hydraulic heaters is that you set a temperature on it. There's also hydraulic oil coolers, so it keeps a constant temperature there. The issue is the first time a hydraulic elevator runs in the morning, if you don't have a heater on it or you don't have a cooler on it, depending on what the outside temperature is, the ambient temperature, it may take a little slow because it's got to pop the seal and stuff, and the oil's got to be a little bit more fluid to move through it. What I tell everybody is just when you get there, run the elevator 1 or 2 times, all the way up to the top, all the way down to the
Yeah,
bottom. You're fine to go.
yeah.
Turn that heater off.
When this problem initially started, that's when it would do that bang, that stroke and bang was when it was like the first use in the morning, or when it hadn't
Yes,
been used for 3 days, it had been sitting there. Okay, that's great to
exactly.
know.
Yeah.
I got another question for you. So you're saying the life of a hydraulic unit after 2010 is approximately 25 years?
Yes.
I mean, we're not an apartment building. I'm not, we're a church, and
Yes.
this maybe gets used. Yeah, I have two units now, a newer one, and I mean, it doesn't get used very much. Put it that way. I
Right.
think more people use the steps and use the unit. Do you expect a little more life out of a unit like that if it's not being used as heavily?
So I would expect more life out of the elevator, out of all the components, except for the software that's in your controller. That's the problem. So the OEMs, the big four, they change out their software probably every 18 to 22 years. If they change out their software and you have a glitch with your elevator, it's done. You're not going to find a programmer to take care of it. So that's where the 25 years came from. But it's not based on use. In a lot of cases, it's based on, can you get the equipment for a proprietary controller? Now, if you
Okay.
have a third-party controller, such as a smart rise or a motion control controller or an elevator controller, that's a completely different story. You can get software from them, and you can probably get 40, 50 years out of that elevator before you have to worry about the software going bad.
Okay, so let me ask you. So I have Virginia Controls, and they went
Mhm.
out of business, I believe, or
Yes.
sold or whatever. So it's I don't No, it's relays, and it's almost like analog. I don't even think there's any software in it. So
Yeah,
and I get blown fuses once in a while. I guess I could get a relay go bad, but I have the schematics for it. That's all I got.
right.
I got some guys come in and look at it, don't even know what they're looking at, but other guys say, "Oh, it's Virginia controls," and you have the schematic, and we can
Yeah,
figure out what's going on by testing some
right.
voltage. So I can maintain this then, basically, right? Is what you're saying?
Yeah, as long as you can buy those ice cube relays, you're
Yeah.
good.
Okay.
If you can't get them, and a lot of times you can't get the right voltage or amperage in those ice cube relays because they've all changed their design over there, whether it be Cutler Hammer's design or whoever's design, Allen Bradley, whoever.
Yeah.
Um, so what I would suggest, if you have those old ice cube relays, if you can
Yep.
find some, you may want to have some in stock, just sitting
Yeah.
around, because
Okay.
at some point you're not going to find the right amperage that goes through them, or they're
Okay.
going to have a strange voltage on them, and it's not going to work.
Yeah, I went through that with some of the fuses that went.
Oh,
Um, so
yeah.
okay. Very helpful. Thank you. I got one other question, if you don't mind.
Of course.
Um, we reclaim our oil out of the where the packing is by the head of the pit, the cylinder.
Yep.
And we just run it into a 5-gallon bucket, but it doesn't go back to my oil tank. If that fills up, if the oil's clean, we just pour it back into the tank. That's okay to be doing that, correct?
It is, as long as you stay on top of it, because what
Okay.
I've seen a lot of times is that 5-gallon bucket gets tipped over for whatever reason. It could be, that bang from the first thing in the morning that
Yeah.
shook and knocked it over. If it knocks it over, you're going to have one heck of an oil mess in the pit.
Yeah.
And it's just
I,
something to be aware of. But yeah, if you're on top of it, that's a fine way to do it.
yeah, I'm on top of it, and I'll be honest with you. I don't get much oil in there, so my seal's pretty good. I don't have a
Good.
lot of. Okay, all right.
Yeah, then that's perfect. And I recommend that to a lot of people if they're going to stay on top of it. If they don't have the maintenance staff to stay on top of it, because most elevator service companies, some say they're going to come out there monthly, some are doing it quarterly, some are doing it semi-annually, some are doing it annually. It depends how their contract's written for you.
Yep.
But if
Yep.
they're coming out there not frequent enough and you don't have the staff to monitor that 5-gallon bucket in the pit, that's when
Yeah.
I suggest you get the oil reclaimer so it automatically pumps it back.
Got you. Okay. Jeff, thank you so much.
You're
Appreciate your
welcome.
appreciate your help.
You're
Thanks.
welcome.
Hey, Calvin, did you get your question answered? Calvin's good. I have one other one here, Jeff, that
Okay.
I believe Joshua's on. Is he? No. Okay, I'll read it. What are the main differences between regulations of a lift, quote, handicap versus elevator?
So when I'm assuming when he's talking about a lift, a handicap lift, he's talking like a wheelchair lift or something that's only going to go up so many floors, not a Lula, which is a limited use, limited access unit, which may go 12 feet, 15 feet. The code requirements, completely different. It's a completely different section of the A17.1 code book. I think it's A17.5, but I'm not 100% positive, just because I don't deal with a lot of wheelchair lifts. But as far as your electrical disconnects, you don't have to worry. You have to have one. You don't have to have multiple ones. You do have to test them monthly, but you don't have to go through your fire testing that you have to for a regular passenger elevator that's enclosed. So the requirements aren't as nasty. You don't have fire service with a wheelchair lift, so you don't have to upgrade your fire panel if you ever were to modernize. And when you modernize a wheelchair lift, it's actually tear out and replace. On an elevator, an electric elevator, hydraulic elevator, modernize, you're replacing components, but you're not getting rid of your guide rails, your structure, your frame around the cab, and so on. On a wheelchair lift or a handicap lift, you're tearing out everything that's there and you put something new in its place. Otherwise, you're just doing repairs. So hopefully that answered his question. If you can relay that to him.
Well, yeah, we're recording this, so we'll do
Okay.
that.
Okay.
And let's see, that's all I had on here. Does anyone else here have another question for Jeff before we close up today? Nothing. Well, Jeff, thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate not only your your ability to stay with us as an organization, but thank you for today and your knowledge. We really do appreciate it.
You're very welcome. And please share my name with whoever. I'm willing to help anybody if they run into questions with elevators. I want to be a different type of person, a different type of elevator company where I can share my knowledge and it doesn't cost anything. I just share my knowledge. So,
well, we thank you very much.
Yeah, so Jeff and I met a couple years back, and that hydraulic question that he was talking about, I had Otis trying to tell me I needed to change my hydraulic oil, so I brought Jeff out as to look at it, and he's like, I can see all the way to the bottom of the reservoir. You'll probably last another 30 plus years.
Yep.
And Otis was trying to bill me 10 grand to replace it. So yeah, Jeff really likes our organization. Don't hesitate if you have those elevator questions to reach out to him. He'll be at the conference as well as one of our vendors.
Yes.
So
one of the big issues we're having here locally is Otis is quoting prices that are 400 to 700% higher than the standard.
Holy smokes.
The guys around here aren't sure why that's happening, other than the fact that they must not want any business.
Yeah,
it's because you're in Lubbock, Texas.
It's primarily because they feel they got you. And what I tell everybody, if you have an Otis elevator, Otis is going to play it up just like if you owned a Ford, and you believe in going to, actually, I got to use a fancier card. Let's say you own a Lexus. You're not going to take it to Mon Pa to do some serious work on that Lexus. You're going to go to the Lexus dealership where their labor rates are 2 to 3 times more than it would be at Mon Pa's place. It's the same game that's going on. But I would be if you ever run into proposals, you just want me to take a second look at it and say, I think you can go back to them. What I have found out is that if people go back to the OEM, so the big four, and they act because they've gotten some knowledge of the elevator system and they start asking key questions, all of a sudden the big four start, lack of a better term, puckering up, and all of a sudden that price starts dropping. And it's just if they know that you know something, they can't charge those prices anymore.
Yeah, awesome. Well, hey, I want to be conscious of everybody's time. We've been on here for an hour, so let me pray us out. And hey, reminders, conference coming up. So if you aren't signed up for conference, we'd love to see you there here in about 7 or 8 weeks or whatever it is right now. And other than that, please stay in touch. If you have questions about anything, please holler at any of us on the board. We'd love to talk with you. So here we go. Heavenly Father.
Except for James.
Well, yeah, I was going to leave James out. We pray for James specifically, Heavenly Father. But anyway, thank you for today. Thank you for Jeff. Thank you for his knowledge. God, we just continue to bless each and every one of us as we continue to do the job that we believe you have put us in. And God, bless this organization. We ask all these things in your name, I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all. We'll get another timeout, but sometime in August we'll shoot for another one. But hope to see you all at conference.
Peace, love, and Fruit Loops, y'all.
Okay.
See you, everybody.